Hi everyone, it's your boy Zach, and the bad news is that some freak shows are attacking Ed Piskor again. The good news is that his family, specifically his sister, is defending him. So before I start, um, uh, one of the ways you can always kind of reverse engineer if someone is trying to spin some sort of narrative about you is that you know that thing from grade school. It's like, hey, can I copy your paper? Yeah, but just like change some things around so it's not obvious. They never do that. So they just you'll just be going about your business, and all of a sudden a whole bunch of people will be using the exact same canned phrase. So I was talking about Star Wars of all things, and some people didn't like that, so they wanted to get revenge on me. So a whole bunch of people, like apropos of nothing, said, "Stop profiting off of Ed's death." And I'm like, what the? Okay, who is spinning that narrative? Because I don't freaking monetize the videos about Ed since his death. So this is the channel content searching by Ed's name, and I made 3 videos about him before he died. One of which I had to buy a book that was like $25 to review. And then since then, you can see on the monetization, they are all off until there was a break of like, for some reason in the middle of May, I just forgot to do that. So I made like $9 off of these 2 videos. And then I remembered with this next one. If I remember correctly, with this one, I just, muscle memory, I've been doing this for 7 years, like, okay, make the video go live. But it was up for like 20 minutes, and then I was like, I switched it to demonetize. So I'm going to switch these right there. I didn't want to do it not, here. So they're like, oh, you're trying to make $9 off of his death. So anyway, and am I allowed to talk about comics? Is that allowed? So I started reading this just because I was writing a scene for a book that's kind of got that Frank Miller, RoboCop, 1980s over the top humor and violence type of thing. So I started reading this miniseries, which I never really liked. It's okay. I read the first issue last night. Not great. It's okay, but it seems very very much the type of comic that Ed and Jim would have gone over on cartoonist kayfabe. So where do I start? Not to bury the lead. When comics open the gates for diversity, for some reason, only the most damaged and damaging women walked through. If you want to talk about all of mainstream comics and the women in it who act normal, it's like 6 people. The rest of them tend to be like this Claire Napier, which sounds like a pen name to me. But anyway, last week, apropos of nothing, but actually apropos of something incredibly vicious and evil, Claire decided to launch. She presents it as some sort of like thoughtful essay that's been researched for months. You read it. First of all, like, just the basics of education these people don't have. Like, when do you learn how to write a very basic essay, like a thesis paper? What is it, like middle school, maybe freshman year? This doesn't build. Any of the paragraphs could be in any order. It's just her maligning Ed because Ed is nominated for an Eisner, as is Alex DeCampi, and that's going to be next weekend. So when it was close enough to the awards, she had to spread this absolute defamation, disgusting shit. And like I say about Alex DeCampi, Tess Fowler, you can't name their books. You can't name a Claire Napier book. You can name her victims. You can name Alex DeCampi's victims. You can't name her book. So she did like a multi-platform launch on this. And it's just fucking, I mean, it's not that long. Okay, I'll see how. Okay, so. Oh, wait, I read this beginning part. So she said that Ed dropped out of school, and then his sister corrected her by showing literally Ed's graduation photo at high school. So she added this: as an English person, my use of dropped out in the opening paragraph below is descriptive. He stopped attending the site of the school as per the interview with the Journal linked in the second paragraph. I have come to understand that the American use of the phrase is declarative and often judgmental. If he dropped out, he cannot have achieved the final certification of high school. This is an unfortunate cultural difference that has led to many consider this a hit piece. Oh. I've said this many times, I'll say it again. The last major operation in Afghanistan, we captured a member of the Taliban. You know, he's sitting there crisscross applesauce on the ground, waiting to be taken to the local sheriff, who's most likely his cousin, and released the next day. But I took a mental snapshot and I said, this is the last evil man I will ever meet. It was a trick question. I should have said person, and I was wrong. Oh, fuck, I was not ready for that. I kind of didn't notice that when I was skimming this before. People don't call this a hit piece because you got his high school graduation situation incorrect. You go on later to imply that he was some sort of attempted mass murderer. This is an unfortunate cultural difference that has led many to consider this a hit piece and, quote, full of lies, unquote. That was his sister correcting you. I apologize for my mistake. Please read dropped off as I intended it. I am not changing the wording of this article because plenty of people have discussed it already. So she says, Ed Piskor dropped out of high school due to extreme digestive issues brought on by stress. His social life was severely limited by the circumstances of his upbringing, and from around middle school he was isolated from the children who had been his peers. Speaking of, quote, suddenly, unquote, finding himself a white child at odds with his mostly black peer. Like, these are sentence fragments. What is this? This is voice to text. After hospitalization at age 15, Piskor was provided with 4 hours of formal schooling a week through teacher visits to his home, and by his own description, his parents largely allowed his self-directed preoccupations, mainly drawing otherwise. A school day's curfew no longer defining his schedule, he began spending time mainly with older teenagers and adults outside of his family, staying out all night with them, sleeping late, and waking for a 3 to 5 p.m. home lesson on the 2 days a week they happened. In pre-adolescence, Piskor was used to the hostile banter of boy space friends. Is that how they talk in England? Friends who are guys. And spoke of their fully negative, provocative, artistic feedback with fond acceptance. He remembers this as providing an, quote, incentive, unquote, to do, quote, better work, unquote. Later, at 22 or 23, when Harvey Pekar gave him sudden and unreasonable challenge deadlines which clashed with Piskor's birthday plans, Piskor buckled down, forgot the birthday, and hit the mark. Pekar was an authority and he wanted to please him. By 2013, to Mark Sobel for the Journal, that's the hyperlink. So it looks like she wanted to write a hit piece. She's like, oh, this is not a hit piece. It's an investigative essay. So let me go to one source. Like, do you see how, like, she does this preamble, but that's not an opening paragraph for an essay. She just jumps into transcribing bits of the only source she went to for information. Piskor disavows the work he did for and with Pekar. He is ashamed because he doesn't think it's good enough. He feels he let Pekar and his legacy in comics down. In that same 2013 interview, Ed Piskor mentions his chronic depression and habits of overwork, self-isolation, and fixation. His self-image seems contradictory. He mentions always getting good grades while in school, but, quote, definitely, unquote, being, quote, the worst, unquote at most things. He says he worked his balls off. Implicitly, he characterizes his efforts towards success that he achieved, as evidence that it was unearned. Still later than the Picard collaboration, Piskor remembers spending a month not being able to get out of bed after a cartoon he worked on debuted with changes that he felt misrepresented his intentions, work, expectations. He compares himself to Rain Man. Okay, this. I did a video where I mentioned this, but like I talked to a friend. I said I've made 5 attempts to read this and I can never get through it because it's so poorly written. You don't just go to a single source and then just summarize bits of it and then go, okay, and now let's start the defamation. Like, what is this? This is insipid. This is childish. He compares himself to Rain Man. This is a book report, citing his encyclopedic knowledge of an area of special interest. Rain Man, too obviously autistic, is not generally considered a cool role model that people want to be like. Okay, what is that? That's just a subjective opinion. Piskor, habitually inside or out, wore large sunglasses and a hat. What are you, a space alien? Why are you describing Ed like nobody knows what he looks like? What the fucking hell is this shit? Okay, so she just wastes everyone's time doing a freaking elementary school book report of one interview and one podcast. Okay, so let's get to what this is actually about. So I think that was her being an investigatory journalist. Okay, so 11 years later. So she found 2 sources from when Obama was president, and she's like, I'm an investigatory journalist. And like that's not how you do that. So this is the part that actually matters. This is what she actually wanted to write about. 11 years later, when the comics milieu at large expressed distaste for Piskor's sexualizing treatment of girls or women within his orbit as a cartoonist, Piskor did not embrace this provocative condemnation as an incentive to do better. She literally says do better. I'd like to let that stand as the most important sentence in this piece. He did not hear, that sucks, man. She didn't even put quotes here. I can't believe you did that as a natural incentive to do better work. Piskor chose denial, invalidation, and self-harm and blamed his self-harm on that commentary of distaste. He did not blame it on an inability to deal with his own internal conflict. Oh, okay, so she was building a case that he was conflicted with by just summarizing an interview from 2013. If we ask, did he cite his history of depression, repression of social stress, or his predisposition to gosh, she's trying to sound smart. She sounds really stupid. Predisposition to self-negation and choosing to isolate in times of stress when explaining the reasons for his catastrophic self-harm, then we can say that he does tell us he is a solitary guy whose every waking moment is put into comics. And what are comics? They are messaging, they are delivery of feeling, perspective. They involve writing. Okay. So, like, just not trying to curse. We know what comics are. We know what Ed Piskor is. Like, fuck, this is just fucking babbling. So, I can't read this whole thing. Basically, what she's saying is he killed himself. It's his fault. He should have been better. Leaving out that her shithead friends saw a guy symbolically on the edge of a building dealing with one allegation and said, you know what he could use? Like 4 or 5 more. So they started saying that he was a racist, even though he fucking loved black culture. They said he was a sexist based on a Twitter account that wasn't his, that was defending him, and their logic was, he's such an evil person, the only person who would defend him is himself. Therefore, let's scroll through this other Twitter account. I mean, they were on the warpath, and they were gleeful. We all saw Ramon Villalobos laughing at the family the day he died, doing this Eddie Haskell bullshit routine. Now this fucking imbecile who draws like a fucking retard. This is her art. This is her art. And since I don't have a Twitter account, when I go to someone's account, I get this weird thing where it's not in order, it's just their most popular tweets. And it's just 10 years of this untalented person jumping on every single digital lynch mob, misquoting people. So when Greg Smallwood stood up for like just basic humanity and empathy, this was her response. Smallwood with the quote, "Let's blackball people for speaking negatively about unprofessional men." No. He said he's not going to work with anyone who directly contributed to the death of Ed Piskor. That's what he said. And then, it's not the publisher's job to sell your book, is what demons say. Probably just literally every single digital lynch mob, she's in on it. Probably the most famous one is Dan Panosian did a cover for that awful book, what was it? The Women from Apocalypse. And this psychopath drew an X through the entire page, and the X crossed at the crotch of one of the characters. And she said that was misogyny and tried to get Dan Panosian canceled. What is her blind item here about Ed? I'll say it here too. I think it's very bad that a guy who leaves a suicide note full of money talk, specific lifestyle deprivation, and blame becomes the talk of a scene for how he must have felt about being held accountable and mocked. Well, he did have to deal with one situation, although his sister has some information about that. He didn't have to deal with 4 false allegations heaped on his shoulders and the idea that she's blaming him. She's like, he had a habit of isolating. You all have a habit of isolating. You freaks spent about 1.5 to 2 years trying to get me to kill myself. And one of your lead tactics was to terrorize anyone who talked to me. To terrorize anyone who talked to someone who talked to me. You wanted me despairing and isolated. What do people do when they're despairing and isolated? She's like, well, we didn't drive him to isolation. He had a habit of being solitary. He says it in this quote from an interview from 2013. All artists are solitary. You know that. You and your evil group of untalented people saw a man about to get a gallery show in his hometown, and that drove you fucking nuts. So you found a woman who, by the way, by her own admission, her boyfriend said, keep talking to this guy. It'll help your career. You found another woman who just slept with him and, I don't know, was angry he didn't marry her. And you created this narrative that he was everything bad. And these people, nobody's ever bad at one thing or they made one mistake. They're always omni-bad. So it wasn't just the initial allegations. He also had to be a racist and a homophobe and CG adjacent and all these things. Fuck, I'm getting angry. These people are so fucking evil. They are evil. Imagine driving someone to suicide. It's like, well, it's his fault for being by himself. He should have hung out. He should have chopped it up. Yeah, like you do. Your whole life is just tweet. And the thing that drives me fucking insane is this. And Cheryl Lynn Eaton did the same fucking shit. So this is one of the friends basically. This is a family member just writing saying like your hit piece is untrue and delineating how. So this is her response. We'll be offline this weekend. So if anyone gets weird, just don't worry. So this other person says, she was acutely aware of the commotion her fiction would provoke, having dropped the, quote, truth bomb, unquote. She has now gone into hiding. I am so sorry you are going through this. Ed Piskor was and is loved. So, I got to go back. So basically she's setting up this narrative that he had a habit of being by himself, so it's not their fault if he killed himself when he was by himself, because he should have been more social. The fuck. Oh, and like I said, these are just they're literally just like random. So she's not making any point. All of these paragraphs could be shown in any order, and she's like, for a limited time, cartoonists. Oh fuck. So I've read this entire paragraph, and I'm getting just angry just thinking about what she's about to say. For a limited time, cartoonist kayfabe Piskor's podcast put out a shirt that said, "Frederick Wortham can eat a dick." How should we condemn this kind of shit-chatting? How viciously was it supposed to land? Is it different because Wortham is dead? Is it different because we can see material results of Wortham's pernicious behavior on comics and looking at how creep shit affects women and people men think are probably women, even when they are what the fuck? This is like the worst English ever. Even when they are cartoonists, even cartoony as a scene that suffers loss and imbalance when misogyny weighs our ranks out, just doesn't register the way until we let it, and a lot of us won't let it. Okay, they made a joke t-shirt about a guy who died like 40 years ago, and that's your excuse for writing a hit piece on a man who killed himself because of the pressure from your peer group like 100 days ago? What the fuck is wrong with you? When Piskor signed off from public life with one last bitter missive, he sexualized a woman who had objected to his prior sexualization of her, rejected his sexual interests' classification of his behavior towards them, used familiar misogynistic language, and characterizes himself as pitiable, lonely, yearning, an underdog. Perhaps he yearned. What do women in comics yearn for? Can we yearn together? Piskor spoke about a mob as having murdered him, and also asked the people reading a note, which remains online, to punish a range of specifically named people, his murderers. He cannot have it both ways. He is either not forced into action out of nowhere, blameless and inert on his own account by a mob, or he is himself a mass murderer by intent. Just give me a second here. So this evil bitch said he cannot be a despairing man because he expressed himself while writing his suicide note. She then says that him naming his murderers was trying to get people to murder them. Therefore, he is a mass murderer by intent. Fucking shit, I didn't notice this part of the sentence. Or is he himself a mass murderer by intent, supported by those who control his estate? So which is the truth? I think that genuinely needs to be answered in the popular imagination. I don't think it's hard. It just takes incentive. It just takes trying. It just takes accepting the prompt to improve. If you feel worthless, you're incorrectly informed, and you can learn to see your value. But you can't do it by blaming bitches for disliking the behavior of someone even you don't care for. You don't do it by blaming bitches at all. Okay, so that's your word for yourself. So we do blame the bitches. And one thing I always say is, I can be a hothead, fly off the handle, now and then. Actually, fairly frequently. So I really value the opinions of my calm friends. My calm friends are more angry about Ed's murder than I am. He had to deal with one set of allegations. You freak shows decided, he might not kill himself. What if we also heap on 4 additional allegations? You can fight one set of allegations. You can't fight 5, especially when you're depressed. Now, from posts from his family, it sounds like they kept an eye on him for like a week after, like, you watch him, and then after a while, like, they got to get back to their regular life, so they weren't watching him. And just from the military suicide watch usually lasts for about 24 hours. You got to get back into, like, people, you can't just live in a state of suicide watch. So he kind of, okay, hey, Ed, go hang out with your dad, hang out with your sister, go hang out with your brother-in-law. And they kind of watched him for like a week, and then they had to get back to work. And that's when he, I guess, disappeared. Sounds like he went to a hotel and then killed himself in his car by unknown means. So his sister wrote, well, first of all, she wrote to Claire directly, expressed how hurt she was. Claire only clarified about the different English use of the phrase dropping out. So Justine wrote this very long essay. I don't have the heart to read it. It's too sad. Basically, it's a minute-by-minute delineation of her dealing with finding out about the suicide of her brother. And I'll just read the end. It is a genuine shame. People took something so small and ruined lives over it. Not just Eddie's, my entire family's broken. You have no idea what these past 3 months have been like. People poking fun at my dad on the news. The first girl admitted nothing happened. The second girl flat out saying she got what she wanted, only to delete it later. Don't worry, I have your screenshot. People on TikTok stating it's not sad that my brother passed. Then they don't even answer my comments. They just block me because it doesn't fit their agenda. Well, guess what? My brother was and is better than you in every way possible. He achieved so much more than any of these trolls will, and he's still going to keep achieving because there is so much more. Then she says her family has more of his art that they're going to share. Now here's your reminder to be better and do better. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. And lastly, spread the positive vibes. Stop using my brother for clickbait and let our family mourn. Ed Piskor forever. So one of the things that's been so heartening in this tragedy is how much his family, specifically his sister Justine, has defended him. One of the weird things about comics is usually we're the only person in the family that really loves comics. You might have an older brother who gave you his copy of US1 and he's like, here you go, and you're like, oh, this is really cool. But it's very rare for like even like two brothers in a family to both like just love comics. Usually it's this weird little hobby that you are into. And so we don't really share our love of comics with our family. It's just like a hobby that, you don't really talk about. So you never, ever, ever, except for in this case, when someone is canceled and attacked and, like they did to me, try to drive me to suicide. I mean, it was everyone from homeless psychos using McDonald's Wi-Fi on Obama phones all the way up to Joe Quesada. And they were definitely trying to, their main tactic was to isolate me. That's why they weren't successful. But damn if they didn't try. And damn if they didn't try with Ed. And so what she's saying is like, oh, it's not our fault he was suicidal. He was always suicidal his whole life. And it's not our fault he isolated. He isolated frequently throughout his life. He just should have been better. No. And everyone says this. The initial allegations were survivable. What wasn't survivable was adding 4 more, which was specifically the actions of Alex DeCampi and Ramon Villalobos. Those are the people who added 4 additional allegations to an already suicidal guy. So seeing his family not just defend him once, but basically every time these pieces of shit show up to defame him or write a very poorly written hit piece, his sister's there to defend him, to correct the record, and this is going to be an ongoing concern. We have to do this. It's so great that the family, I guess he kind of brought the family into his love of comics, so they kind of knew about it and were involved more so than most families are, even with people who are professionally in comics. But we got to keep doing this. It's going to be whack-a-mole forever. Every few months, these shitheads are going to do this, and every few months, we're going to have to smash it down. Calling him a mass murderer by intent, like, geez, like, and then pulling the Cheryl Lynn Eaton bit of, and these people are online all day, every day. And then when they defame a dead man, oh, gotta go, won't be online this weekend. Let me know if anything crazy happens. Something crazy did happen. A fundamentally untalented woman wrote a hit piece on a man who was 100 times better human than her, 1,000 times, infinitely better. They always like to portray bullies as some sort of like 1980s stereotype. This is what a bully looks like these days. We have been horrifically bullied by these awful women, almost exclusively women. It's women, trans women, and morbidly obese guys with crashed testosterone. Men don't act like this. Women act like this. Trans women act like this. Men with no testosterone act like this. It's funny, I did a video the other day about how women are terrorized by their fellow women just as much as men. The difference is that, and then I saw that Valerie DeRazio did an entire Twitter essay about this subject like 24 hours before I did. I didn't find out about it afterwards. But the advantage that women have is that women had to deal with female bullying their whole life, specifically middle school, high school. So they're used to this. Men are not used to the very acidic form of female bullying. It gnaws through our chest into our heart. It just gets to us. We're used to more acute physical or threats of physical intimidation. We are not used to acid just whittling away at your soul every day for a decade, which is what we've had to deal with. We've been dealing with the bullying of Tess Fowler and Alex DeCampi and Claire Napier and Stephanie Cook. All of these shitheads who are comics professionals, and nobody can name a single book they work on. But you can name their victims. And Ed Piskor, the thing that drives me fucking nuts is that she went through an interview where he was a candid about issues he had dealt with, and she used it against him. It's not our fault he was isolated. He did that to himself. We didn't give him depression. He had that already. The initial set of allegations were survivable. 4 more allegations specifically created by Alex DeCampi and Ramon Villalobos are what drove him to kill himself. Alex, Ramon are responsible, in my opinion, for Ed Piskor's death. And I believe in the future this will be common sense. Internet is still, if you want to think about, all of human history, fairly new, and we're still adjusting to it and all the harmful things it can do. A bully in the comic book industry does not look like Biff Tannen. It's not some jock with a blonde flat top and a flipped up collar. This is what bullies look like. Also, this is a very old picture of her. What do we do? Every time they defame him, just frickin' point out their tactics, point out how what they're saying is not true, illustrate their evil. And this is evil. What they did is evil. Driving a man to suicide is evil. Dancing on his grave is evil. Leaving out all the actions that your peers did that contributed to his death is evil. And again, if you go through, I guess if you log out, you'll see her Twitter account the way I see it. It is literally just 10 years of joining in on every digital lynch mob. Comics, as an industrial scene, is not very good at talking about suicide or lives. And if you even think the merest whisper of the word groupie, you have to wait one extra year and seek out literature on the... these are two different thoughts. Okay, so like I said, I get them all like out of order. But yeah, it's just her jumping in on literally every digital lynch mob. Promoting Daryl Ayo of all people. Oh yeah, he's a straight shooter. This fucking goddamn ridiculous. Awful. I'm sorry that I kind of get the feeling that like the Ed's family, like they really supported his career and they were proud of him, but they didn't really get a clear look at the evil of, I mean, a handful of people in the comic book industry that basically nobody has told shut up or stop. I mean, Alex DeCampi was told the opposite. Named as a murderer 1 month, nominated for Eisner the next month, and not for a good book. You know me. It doesn't matter how awful the person is. If a comic graphic novel is good, I will say it was good. Parasocial was shit. It was freaking dog shit. Not even getting into the fucking psycho essay, blind item essay that Alex DeCampi put at the end of it, complaining about something that C.B. Cebulski had done 20 years prior. Insanity. This was a hit piece designed to defame Ed the week before the Eisners. So, fucking hell. It's rough stuff, man. I have not seen evil and horrors in war like I have seen in the mainstream comic book community. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.